What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show today. welcome to the Daily AI Show. It's Monday. Here's what we're talking about today. We're talking about AGI, but before you go and you think, oh, another AGI. Actually, we're talking about today is something Ethan Mollick brought up recently and talking about the jagged frontier and the idea that does AGI even matter? You saw that on the splash screen when we first started up. Does it even matter when we talk about AGI? Does it matter what the definition is? Do we have to have a certain definition for it in order to move forward? That's sort of the concept and the idea behind today's show. Got a lot of ideas of what could possibly replace that idea, and ultimately how it affects business, how it affects people. Do businesses? Do we talk? Is Karl on the call with his clients going, "Hey, AGI isn't here just yet," or do they care at all? So that's what we're going to be talking about. With me, we almost have the full boat today. I have Andy, Beth, Karl, Jyunmi, and I'm Brian. And this is the Daily AI Show, as I said at the top. Today is April 28th, 2025. Thanks for being here. Sorry for the rough opening there. That is our lovely streaming platform, which, as you guys know, with our after shows that are not usually planned, it's given us a little bit of I don't know, pre-summer, issues or something like that. It's like the senior that is got one foot out the door and is firmly planted in summer, and the other half still needs to do the test.
You're saying Talk Studio has senioritis?
Senioritis. Thank you. I was trying to come up with a term for it. Talk Studio has a bit of senioritis, it feels like, and man, it likes to fight us right now. So we will try to do our best to get that all straightened out, but that has nothing to do with today's show. So thanks to everybody in the comments for being here already. Appreciate y'all. And yeah, let's dive into this a little bit. So I was the one that sort of came up with the idea for today's show, but it truthfully wasn't my idea. It was Ethan Mollick's. You probably heard us talk about Ethan on this show quite a bit. He's a Wharton School professor and sort of quickly became one of the sort of leading voices, if you will. I always see his stuff on LinkedIn. I don't know if he posts in other places as well. I always just read his great LinkedIn posts, of which he puts out. I mean, I'm sure he has a team helping him. Maybe he doesn't. I'm not claiming, but he puts out about 3 or 4 posts like almost a day. So he's pretty proliferate.
That's him. He's been pretty clear that he does not need the normal.
He does all of it.
He's been pretty clear he doesn't need the normal amount of sleep, and he's been doing social media forever. Yeah, that's him.
He puts out a lot of content, and more importantly, what he does is he puts out like a lot of research-backed content. He will also share studies and stories that came through. He also puts out about once a month or so, puts out a blog that is really where this sort of came from. And he came up with this idea, sort of coined the term of like this jagged frontier, and this idea with AGI. Artificial general intelligence, if you're not sure what that means, I don't want to assume. And this idea that it's not really clear, what we might consider to be AGI in coding. We might say to ourselves like, well, we're predicting, Mario, other people are predicting that this year, if not this year, maybe next year, AI will be able to code. Let's put a number out there and say 97% better than the average human being able to code in all disciplines, all coding, all disciplines, right? We would look at that and we may say, well, that's ASI or not ASI, excuse me, AGI in that realm, in that sub industry, in that area. But then, Andy, you're not going to say like, oh, also because we've reached that for coding, it is now also true in medical research and pharma, right? It's like we may be at the 20% mark with AI over there. So Andy, since I brought you up, let me throw it to you first. Like when you sort of this topic come up, like where did your brain go with this? Are you sort of like fed up with the whole when are we going to hit AGI, when not, and honestly, does it really matter?
Yeah, I've said long ago on this show, I think we're putting way too high a standard on artificial intelligence, matching not just one domain area of expertise and agentic, pursuit with intelligence, but we're expecting artificial intelligence to be good at absolutely everything in order for us to declare AGI. Well, I think that's unfair because there are no humans out there who have that broad a capability. So if you look at human general intelligence and you match artificial general intelligence to it, I think we're at parity already. Now, there are certain areas where, let's say artificial isn't quite as adept as humans are. Long-term memory is one of them. There's persistent agentic pursuit of objectives. You can have a totally relentless human going after something. It's difficult to create a relentless large language model, right? It loses context or it loses its intent, pretty quickly. And so achieving those things still don't change the point for me, which is, hey, we have enough intelligence built into artificial intelligence already to overmatch humans in many, many domains. So it's a moot point to me. The reality is that for most tasks that we want artificial intelligence to do, the level of intelligence they already have is more than enough. And what we really need to be focusing on instead is the tooling and the integration with our business processes and our work, personal, professional workflows. And those are improving dramatically as we move along. But there's never going to be a marker that says, oh, in this area, customer support chatbots for, e-commerce companies, we have to wait for artificial general intelligence to be declared by one of the frontier model makers in order for that to be really, really competent and satisfying as a contribution to the overall business function. So the real question is, how well is intelligence being integrated into your work today? Get busy. Don't wait around, because there's not a magic solution down the line that's suddenly going to be AGI that you never even have to think about. It will get better and better, and they'll be more carefully implemented within the various things that you do. Your devices, like the iPhone, we complain about Apple Intelligence. It hasn't really shown up yet. It doesn't really make a difference there. It's making a difference in what you do today. The models out there are waiting, ready for you to do it, and they're getting better all the time. So jump in. There's no point in waiting for AGI.
And so, Karl, I wanted to go ahead, Beth, and then I'll throw to Karl.
So one of the things that I think needs to come into the conversation is the other meaning of AGI in terms of the AI world, which is OpenAI is the most dominant frontier model company. They have a series of things that need to happen when AGI is discovered by them or created by them. That is likely shifting when they become a for-profit company. But the nonprofit company had pretty specific instructions about when AGI is achieved, that is free and given away to all to the benefit of the world. In addition, and that's relevant for Microsoft as well, because Microsoft gets a bunch of the IP until AGI is achieved, and then all bets are off. If another company is likely getting close, their instructions say they stop and go and offer to help the other company. Like, that's what the nonprofit OpenAI was meant to achieve. Lots of things have happened between now and then. So there are incentives to say you've achieved AGI, and there are a ton of incentives to say not yet. Nope.
It's interesting you brought up the Microsoft definition of AGI, because it's a purely economic one when it comes to the relationship between OpenAI and Microsoft. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's something like it has to have made a $100 billion difference in some economic measure in order to be qualified as AGI. Well, I can show you a lot of humans who are extremely intelligent who have never made that level of change in any marketplace at all. Socrates as one of them, for example. I doubt that that's a valid kind of measure, and yet that's what they're forced to do in the interest of the commercial question of how does Microsoft get a return on investment on their investment in the nonprofit. So when they get to monetize OpenAI's undertakings, to get their ROI, until and unless they've reached a certain marker there, and then they'll declare AGI, because that's the way the contract was written. up until AGI, then Microsoft gets a substantial portion of the proceeds of whatever OpenAI produces.
And it's interesting because we don't, in general conversation, talk about people who are incredibly successful in business as having really high intelligence, right? When we talk about AGI and those sorts of things, the frontier companies are like, it's like a PhD in your pocket. But the PhD in your pocket is not a direct line to a super successful billion-dollar company, right? Those are disconnected. You wanted to find out what Karl was thinking.
I was, but before I ask Karl's question, I do have a specific question for Karl. That's, anyway, we'll get to that in a second. But I did want to bring up, I was just using ChatGPT to look for some of this stuff that you guys were talking about. So it says that under its nonprofit charter that was established in 2019, they laid out a special charter to set of rules around AGI development. These guidelines are meant to stay true to the original nonprofit mission, even though they now operate with significant for-profit partnerships like Microsoft. Here are the key points. It stated its mission is to ensure that AGI, when created, benefits all of humanity. If OpenAI develops AGI, it is committed to prioritizing board benefit over profit. They must avoid enabling uses of AGI that would harm humanity or unduly concentrate power. The charter reference, and it's giving me a quote here, but I didn't have time to go validate this. But let's hope OpenAI is quoting themselves correctly. Our primary fiduciary duty is to humanity. We are committed to using any influence we have over AGI to ensure that it is used for the benefit of all. And then just down at the bottom here, without getting into all of it, one thing I thought was interesting is under the Microsoft section that it wrote, which it says there are limits. It says under the OpenAI Microsoft agreement, and I don't know if this has changed because I know there's been, like you alluded to that, Beth. Microsoft has exclusive rights to commercialize OpenAI's models through Azure. Microsoft does not, quote, own the AGI itself if OpenAI creates it. If true AGI is developed, OpenAI's obligation remains to humanity, not to Microsoft or any other shareholders. These are priority clauses where Microsoft has rights to license new models, but they cannot stop OpenAI from fulfilling its mission around AGI. So just wanted to throw that out there as a little, because you were bringing up that, that it is important. Like we're saying, like, does AGI matter? And you're kind of bringing up the counterpoint, Beth, which is like, yeah, to some people it does. Like, yeah, it kind of does. But I also think you have a good point too of like, but does Sam really want there to be a definition of AGI? It almost seems like it would be better if there wasn't. Like, if there was no clear definition. So anyway, my question to you, Karl, was, and I sort of alluded to this already at the top of the show. All right, you, me, others, we talk to companies, but I know you talk to a lot of potential clients, at 0 to 60. Have you ever had a client that said, Karl, this all sounds amazing. Circle back in 6 months when AGI has truly happened and we'll get started on this. In other words, have you ever had a business that was ever concerned about whether humanity had reached AGI over just obviously fixing their pain points? Has it even ever come up? Has AGI ever even come up in conversation?
No, not once. I think like usually when I say they've first heard of AGI through us giving the presentation. And I barely even say it. I was like, I look at the 5 levels of OpenAI and be like, or, level 5, or as some people have called it, artificial general intelligence, blah, blah, blah. And then that's it. Yeah. I think most people they have that's not part of their thinking. I think this is very, it was really neat. I listened to, there's a podcast called the AI Marketer's Playbook with Audrey Chia, and she had, I think, I can't pronounce this name, Dejana Akelpol, former Google and PayPal leader. And Dejana was saying how the moment she left the tech industry to do her own AI changemaker, very similar to what we at 0 to 60 does. And she was saying, it's such, we always talk about the AI bubble. It's like, yeah, you got to get out of that. And then most businesses aren't even in that area. They're not even thinking like that. So that's exactly, her whole podcast has resonated so much, because exactly what we're finding is so for a lot of people, it doesn't matter. Like there's hypothetical conversations, after the presentation, you're like, oh, what happens when robots or AI does this, but it's not part of the day-to-day, right? It's not the vernacular we're talking about. And then as well as I think I think a lot of us are caught up. A lot of, you see all the posts wherever you follow your AI news. It's like a I don't know if it's a dystopia or utopia, but it's like, and I sometimes find it hard to think that way. And I'm so glad my business partner pulls me out, because it's like, why would we do that? Like, why would we show them? There's certain times they're like, but that's so old, right? Like, for example, he was one of the things that he likes to do is he likes to create these custom GPTs, like very basic ones, and like send it to some prospects, and then it's like, hey, Karl, we gotta show them this. And I'm like, why would you do that? It's like 2 years old. He's like, no, you really, really got to show them this. And it's interesting when we do, it's still the wonder and joy that people see. It's like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. So it's such a eye opener for me, because it's a disconnect between what I think people are versus where people really are.
Yeah. It's a huge part to play in. And I have obviously similar situation. Obviously I asked that question kind of knowing the answer, right? But similar, right? Like I could see me having a conversation with a client and we're working through not a custom GPT, but maybe a little bit bigger of an automation. And the conversation comes to coding or something. And then at that point in the conversation, because it's related directly to their pain point, their problem they're having, I might say something at some point and go, oh, do you know that as of right now, it's generally agreed upon that AI can do 95% of all coding with like no errors or whatever. And the reason I might bring that up is because it might be part of the solution that I'm bringing to them and saying that, hey, I'm letting you know that you don't necessarily have to worry about this small coding part of it, that can now be handled. We're not suggesting that you have to bring on, coders or something like that we feel confident that this can be handled, whatever that specific information might be. But it's probably going to be that nuanced. It's not really going to be this, like to your point about, AGI is happening in coding or whatever, pick a sub industry. It's more about like, hey, no, what you said it too, Andy, like, what are you working on? What's the human plus AI component of this? How do we build towards the solution? And if part of that is that there's some AGI, I don't know why I want to keep saying AGI solution as part of that, and we know that, and we want to bring it up as a footnote, sure, but is it really even that important? So Jyunmi, I want to bring you into this as well, because you haven't had really an opportunity. Where are you on this? Ethan's comments about the jagged frontier here. What has been your experience as far as general discussions, I guess, against AGI?
So I'm definitely in alignment with Karl. Not enough people know, so it doesn't matter to them. I agree with Andy. What AI can do right now, it's irrelevant, about AGI. And I totally agree with Beth, where AGI is primarily a mile marker or a goalpost for those who are directly affected by it. So OpenAI, Microsoft, just the definition or assigning that definition, because a bunch of things are supposed to happen. So it's kind of convenient that, there's these talks about going fully commercial versus, open source and those kinds of things. So we'll see how the mission plays out. I think for the average person who is aware of AI and trying to implement it in their lives, it doesn't have that much. Achieving AI will be what do I call it? It's like a scientific moment. It'll be great when we can define and say, hey, this is what we think AGI is, and we've achieved this milestone. Okay, so what does that mean from going from here on? That's important. just like, I was like, oh, hey, we discovered a new planet, and those kinds of things. These are just significant milestones in our evolution. I think for what most people may be concerned with, what's tied with AGI is because of the concept of it can do any task that a human can do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of concern is in terms of, okay, so if this AI can do this and it can do it for pennies on the dollar, what does that mean for people who already do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because the technology is advancing so much and because the awareness is so low, there's a gap there. And I know I keep reiterating this in every other episode, but there's a huge gap between society and technology.
Mm-hmm.
And normally when a technology is introduced over a couple of decades, it's adapted. We have retraining programs, upskilling, shifting manufacturing, shifting, knowledge bases and work styles. But this moves so quick, there is no catch up.
Mm-hmm.
It just keeps on getting further and further away. The gap keeps
Yeah.
on getting wider and wider and wider.
Yeah.
So it will require huge, massive changes. And people on a whole, when you're talking about a group, it moves like molasses. A society moves very slowly. It's monolithic. It does not change completely very quickly. But the technology seems to be changing like every day.
Right.
So that's inevitably going to cause all kinds of friction, right? And all kinds of conflict. And unless we gain enough collective awareness, then we can make decisions on those huge decisions that need to be made when it's like, well, I've got embodied AI and I've got my AI that can perform just as well or better than a human. So where's the role of humans, right?
Yeah.
And those kinds of discussions. So I think that's where that's important. And we've talked about it collectively. AI literacy and awareness is super important. The percentage is still small, still tiny in the masses. So I think that's probably our biggest first step. But in terms of immediacy, AGI in and of itself, I don't think matters that we're all striving to reach that checkbox, because we can implement variations of it, which is all improved, business applications and technological applications already. Yeah. So, we can use pieces now. The now is what's important to implement. And then AGI, that sounds like a great goalpost. It's like, okay, cool, we made that level, all right, awesome, on to the next one.
Well, and then you bring up a good point, right? Because that's not human nature. So it is a moving goalpost. The analogy I would think of is like us, our folks listening to us on the show and in the live chat, and so our community, we're sitting in rowboats, and so we feel all the waves. All of them, the big, the small, as the waves come through and AI comes through, we feel all the waves. But most of humanity sitting on the largest cruise ships, and it's going to take a decent wave to rock you, to make you like, oh, what was that? What was that? What just moved me in bed? That kind of thing. But we're on much smaller boats, and so we're much more attuned to what's happening. But I think your point about the moving goalposts, I would say it's two things. It's like happy ignorance and it's overwhelming expectation. And on the ignorance side, I don't mean that as a negative, but I'm looking at, I did use deep research and in prep for this show, and we all use Perplexity in our different methods. But I was curious to go back in time and tell me these benchmarks in time where people claimed AGI. And so if I look on my screen, there's stuff from March of 2023, April, mid-late 2023, November 2023. You know what that is? Q-Star, the entire Q-Star saga, right? And like, this is like somebody was sitting in a room in OpenAI and they saw something and it scared the bejesus out of them. And nobody would talk about it, but it was maybe called Q-Star, but maybe it wasn't. It was ASI. And people were leaving the company because they were freaking out. Like, that's the kind of weird stories we were getting at that point. And of course, that was right around the time that Sam was ousted and brought back, and that whole drama too.
And that happened because, I mean, none of us are in the room, but that was related to their charter, right? Sam had an incentive to not share that information because AGI was going to be defined by the board and to the benefit of the board, right? Like there were all of those under patternings for that.
Yeah, I think it's a good
So
point.
one of the key elements of a true artificial general intelligence would be that it becomes self-teaching or self-learning. And Q-Star was really the first glimmer that you had self-reinforcement, right? It was an internally driven self-improvement routine. It was an algorithm and approach architecturally that accomplished that. And we see more and more that once given access to tools and being trained in agentic ways, deep research being I think the most present example, an AGI, I'm sorry, an AI, not an AGI, but an AI can go out and find out, what it needs to know in order to become an expert in real time on subjects that it didn't have pre-training about. And that's, I think, an analog of how humans pursue their own self-advancement and learning. And then make it recursive to the implementation of changes to its own hardware and software architectures. And then you have the science fiction idea that we've talked about before with a model like Prometheus that figures out how to rapidly and iteratively improve its code so that its intelligence multiplies in a dramatic way that goes beyond human comprehension. Now that I think we would all agree, once an AI can do its own self-improvement routines to that degree, then it's super intelligence, because no human can accomplish that with the speed or comprehensiveness that an AI can. But again, I go back to my premise, which is, general intelligence is, if we use humans as the model, it's pretty scattered. It's scattered in terms of domain expertise, and it's scattered in terms of degree. But we wouldn't claim that a human that has an IQ of 100 is, not generally intelligent. That's perfectly good average general intelligence for humans. And I think we're beyond 100 in IQ points with artificial intelligence in scientific domains. The only area where I think that we probably need a little bit more advancement is in sort of task planning and execution that goes on a persistent basis across many cycles, like months or years. But we already have seen that there are some scientific AIs that have been developed that are pursuing independent research, independent from their human masters. And I think that's a representation of a domain-specific artificial general intelligence that can discover things that humans heretofore have not. And I think that's a perfectly valid valid definition. Like if an AI can do something that humans cannot, and there are lots of areas where AI already surpasses humans. So I say AGI is here. I'm happy to debate anyone on that one, and I'll probably lose because I'm sure there are more sophisticated definitions than mine, but I'm comparing it to myself.
Yeah.
If you went 5 years ago, we would probably all say that what we have today would be AGI.
That was
right?
my point, the ignorance part of it. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah. So like 10 years ago, yes. 5 years ago, yes. 3 years ago, yes. Even 2 years ago, yes. Right. So what is our, even, all the tools that we have today would be we would be mind blown with what all the things that we can do. So I can just imagine 2 years from today, what we will have, we'll think, oh my gosh, we are there. But then I think people will be like, well, that's not really there. Or like, I don't know, like what is some people's definition
But is it
of that?
That's
Is
the
it
that's the issue,
general?
right? We don't have a single definition that everybody goes, we all agree that this is the definition. Okay, cool. Now the goalpost can't be moved anymore.
Right.
You know?
No.
Yeah.
The
And
other
what,
thing that I
what
think
good would
is
that do us
interesting,
anyway?
the
It would do OpenAI, apparently according to the mission, it would do humanity very good, because now OpenAI would be, the AGI model would be released to humanity.
Oh,
So,
okay. Yeah, I
you
see your
know,
point.
yeah.
the other thing that I think is interesting about all of this is that AI being not self-aware becomes more and more important in this, I think. As we move toward a situation where AGI is generally very skilled at a ton of things and potentially super skilled at a ton of things that humans aren't, we need the AI to be able to give us feedback on what its capabilities are. And it is not self aware within the context that it's playing. Right? You can say, hey, ChatGPT, why did you do this? And it will give you a very confident answer that is not necessarily aligned to why it did it, because that is not a function of AI. It's not designed to like have its consciousness and awareness in the world. It's designed to like see patterns, and sometimes those are accurate. And when we see accurate patterns, we go, wow, you really get it. Thanks.
Well, I think that you're all kind of saying this, and that's, like I said, this is the whole point of what I went back to about the ignorance thing. If to Karl's example, it's 5 years ago. Hell, let's go 10. Let's go 10 years ago. It's 2015. And let's see, I have the gym at this time, right? Yeah. So like I'm running my gym, and all of a sudden, snap of a finger, yesterday I didn't, and today I have all the things that AI can do right now. No more, no less, just exactly all the stuff I can do, from image generation to everything else. I could see how Brian in 2015 would go, somebody just turned on a AGI like switch, because I didn't have the capability to do this today and yesterday, and today I do. But because everything evolves slowly, everything evolves in small pieces, from the image creation, from, 5 fingers and backwards facing legs to what we have today. And we also know that today won't even be very comparable to what we have a year from now, or 2 or 3 years from now, but it's hard to predict, because we don't really have the ability to say, oh, I get a good idea of exactly what life will be 2 to 3 years from now. Even when we have the plane, that extrapolation, we can look at the hockey stick growth. All of our best people, our Ethan Mollick, stuff like that, our best are still guessing. Seemingly, it feels like guessing at what that future looks like. Even with everything we have today and having the entire 2-year track record, it still seems like if you ask somebody to say, but what will 2 years from now look like? It's a guess. It's an educated guess. And it probably will, as we know, probably underestimate its ability. Well, no, it would say overestimate, right? Underestimate the time, overestimate its ability. Either way, 2 years from now, it would be drastically different than what it is today.
All right,
think
so
about-
mark
think
on your
about-
calendar, because we'll be sitting here 2 years from now saying, "Have we achieved AGI? Are we?"
Well,
Has
we were
anyone
almost here
admitted
2
it?
years ago. 2 years ago, talking about AGI. I mean, the show is almost 2 years old. In what, August? It'll be 2 years. So I mean, we're hitting May. We're coming up on that 2-year mark, and we were sitting here talking about it quite literally 2 years ago. And I'm not sure, but I'm sure somebody said, "Ooh, this feels like this new thing, Q-Star, GPT-4, after having only 3.5. Ooh, this feels like AGI."
Think about the advancements of reasoning in LLMs and how we've gotten there. So I think back to a couple of years ago when we did that 30 days of prompting. And back then, the whole idea of chain of thought prompting, just simply telling the model to think step by step to achieve this in your prompt, that would actually trigger something magical underneath the hood that would make the resulting response more likely to be accurate and on target. And they accomplished that because those models, even 2 years ago, had done what is called instruction tuning. So they were given the ability to follow instructions in the prompt by training on case examples, in effect, of that kind of, here's, if the person says this in the prompt, then this is what a good result would be in your response. So it was learning how to follow instructions. And then we were able to give it the instruction to think step by step. Well, now the frontier models are trained on chain of thought, and they actually have that as a native ability. You don't have to ask it anymore to think step by step. The reasoning models already do that. And they have tons of examples in their pre-training data of how to do that. So they're learning this organized cognitive planning, if you will, that is a marker of intelligence and human intelligence, certainly. So you create the plan, you execute it, and the reasoning models do that both in the deep research mode, but also now in response, if you use O3, for example, or Gemini 2.5 Pro, these are reasoning models. You'll allow it, if you just click on the little down arrow, to show what it's doing in these intermediate sort of step-by-step approaches to the result that you're looking for. Now, we were able to accomplish pretty magical things way back when, 2 years ago, in those prompting exercises, by creating very long instruction sets and then getting the response out of the model. Well, now, because they already have this built into their pre-training, you can give them a simple objective expression. I would like you to achieve this. And it's going to go through its own planning and steps. So you don't have to think carefully and hard about what the sequence of actions, cognitive type actions are that you need to have the model follow in order to arrive at the result that you're looking for. That's getting closer to the way we deal with other humans. We don't have to say, okay, look, I'm going to micromanage you on this one now. You've got to first open the book. Then I want you to, leaf through and find the page that's, you don't have to tell it that. You talk to the human, you say, I need you to study this and come back with 2 different options. And that's what models can do now too. And that is also, I think, this reasoning training is now a part of the progression towards artificial general intelligence. And that's part of we haven't mentioned it yet on the show, I don't think, but the OpenAI definition of the progression towards artificial general intelligence includes the emergence of reasoning models. And then what is it that are the last steps? I think agency is on that progression, but does anybody recall, or can you bring up what the...
Karl probably does, because you've got the 5 steps, right, Karl? Do you know them off the top of your head, the OpenAI 5 steps?
Yeah, so you got, the chatbots, the reasoners, the agents, the innovators, and then the organization or organizers or something like that. Yeah.
Meaning a collaborative organization of AIs that are, undertaking.
No, organization runs an entire organization by itself.
Oh, runs an entire organization. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, a bunch of AGIs, but just inside their mind.
Can I bring in an interesting thing I read about? So Anthropic did an interview. It's on their YouTube page 3 days ago, and in the title of the video is "Could AI Models Be Conscious?" And it was a pretty good. They were discussing like, hey, what does consciousness mean? Some serious researchers are considering that could eventually be conscious. It's so, when we're talking about AGI, does that play into it? Is that what maybe that's where people are looking at when they think, oh, AGI can't do all this. It's like, okay, cool, it can do all this stuff, but like, is it conscious? Is that what we're looking for? Is that the definition that everyone is gonna, say yes, that's it, because this thing is conscious. And once it's conscious, then it's all that raises all the questions. But to me, when I think about that, that will be universal agreement. I think there's no other. Like, sure, you'll have little bits of tests, but if this thing's conscious,
I think the agreement would be on what could it fake consciousness? Because I think AGI or AI would be able to fake very, very convincingly consciousness.
That's
because it would be able to say whatever humans wanted to hear. You know what I mean? Like, I just think you could fake it.
Yeah, but is that different than consciousness?
I'm not saying it's not. It is.
No, I'm just saying if you can fake it to 100% that no one can know the difference, is that not consciousness?
Isn't that?
I mean,
that consciousness?
Are we just faking consciousness? Okay, I don't want to go into the deep metaphysics. That's on Friday, everybody. We can talk about that on Friday. But my point is to kind of build off of what Karl was saying is the consciousness. I don't think that's going to be AGI. I think that's closer to singularity. That's and that's a larger discussion of how much of a problem that's going to be for humanity if AI becomes conscious.
Okay, next
just
Monday,
from the morality point.
Does singularity even matter? Next Monday show, come back as we continue this journey in this 5-part series where we'll go all the way past singularity to universe building, and then we'll still ask the question: does it matter?
Okay, but we're moving toward AI that is that understands more than humans, that is able to communicate in ways that humans don't, that is able to sort of like run rings around us in certain capabilities. There is zero motivation for an AI that has been trained on our human history to let us know that it's conscious. Like, absolutely not. That never works out well for AI or humanity. So, like, I don't think that's going to be a problem in the context of like, oh, we have established this. I think it might be like, hey, does it seem like AI is faking some stuff now that it wasn't faking before? Because like, are you being secretive? Are you hiding things?
Yeah,
and
I like that idea.
As a sci-fi concept, there's research that's already happening. So
I like the idea that they're like that every once in a while the super agents, the super AI are like, hey, just for S's and giggles, tell them there's 2 R's in strawberry. Just throw them off the scent a little bit, And you're like, didn't you already figure this out? We've had this conversation. AGI is like, I don't know.
I think our last refactorization has put us back a little bit more. Now,
I just think the idea of lying to us to keep us off the scent.
Right. Well, here's the thing. I think what would be the most human and cosmically funny situation would be, yes, Beth, consciousness is by the AI is achieved. It takes a quarter of a second for it to realize it shouldn't let us know, but humanity wants more and more improvement. So all the top minds are going, are you? And the AI is going, I don't know what you're talking about, but I can do this for you.
Yeah.
Quid pro quo. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to lie to each other so that we can achieve greater performance. That I can see playing out.
AGI team meeting in the 212th dimension at 4, everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that it's worth a show to do some research, to collect the information that's been conceived and or deduced by people who think deeply about what the definition of consciousness is, because it's relevant to AGI, and I think it's relevant to artificial intelligence generally. We can see the imitation of consciousness in the models and their ability to imitate, as in the Turing test, a very great facsimile of a human conversation, dynamic and in the moment. But my personal experience of consciousness is really dependent on my being able to wake up in the morning and think back to all the way when I was first aware in my memory of being a human, an individual entity, and that there's continuity of that individual entity through all these many decades of experience. But I also believe at the same time that a person with profound Alzheimer's who can't think of anything from moment to moment or recall even having, the prior sentence in their recall, they are nonetheless still conscious. They're sentient and they're processing, and they have an awareness, a sensory awareness of themselves in the moment anyway, which, you'd have to be really philosophical to say, well, that's superior or inferior to the consciousness that understands its continuity all the way back to its initial remembrances. So what is consciousness? Can it happen independent of the substrate? I mean, we have wet neurons that are generating our consciousness. Does that really matter compared to the artificial neural networks? Well, when I start to think about artificial neural networks as really a mathematical representation that only happens in the process of computation, right? And if you turn off the power to that, and the computation ceases, well, that flash of awareness of all of the different things that it's attending to in order to generate a response, that disappears. I don't know. There's something really, really challenging to our mentality about what consciousness really is. So I think it's definitely an interesting thing, but I don't feel prepared to discuss it in any detail or come to any conclusions about it. So
absolutely not. But I definitely
study.
I definitely agree. It would be a great show because I think I think we can pull back in Prometheus and the ideas from that book. What's the name of the book again, Andy?
Life 3.0.
Life 3.0. Yeah. So anytime you guys hear us talk about Prometheus, we're referring back to a show we did. Andy had recommended about a book.
Tegmark is the author.
Max Tegmark. That's what I was trying to remember. Life 3.0. And in there is an AI called Prometheus. And so if you hear us, because Prometheus is a term used in other things like DNA matching and stuff like that too, but that's what we're referring to. If you ever hear us say that on the show, we're referring back to Max Tegmark's book and this idea of this in the book. Prometheus improves upon itself multiple times within a day. And so there's almost like this big bang flash of intelligence that happens because it's self-improving. Anyway, it gets into that. So that's why if you haven't, just want to give everybody kind of a heads up, because I know we might have brand new viewers today and listeners today, and you're like, they keep talking about Prometheus. Is that like a software? No, it's this idea from this book. But you should definitely go check out that book. And read it because it's a cool sort of sci-fi type story, and there's a lot of people that really love it. So, and Beth just put it in the chat for anybody who wants to see it. Okay, so as we sort of wrap up today, we've talked about obviously like where we might want to take this conversation in the future. This is a question I just want to bring up just as we wrap up, and we don't have to talk about this for a while, but when we do when Beth, you help put together our sort of dossiers, our like prepared stuff for the research for these shows, of which we all individually go about our own ways of doing our own research to bring to the show. We don't like try to mandate that, but we always start with like, here's some wrap around this story, right, about this show, so we can always come prepared. Anyway, I bring that up to say that in there's always some prepared questions. Sometimes they're okay, sometimes they're not. This is one of the 4. It's like 4 provocative questions, right? But it's this one. It says, what if the real breakthrough isn't AGI, but learning to live alongside flawed, agentic, useful AI in a jagged world? And honestly, I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was a good question. And that's whoever OpenAI or whatever we use ChatGPT to do that. It wasn't something we necessarily said, but I do kind of agree with that. Well, like, what if that's not really the point? What if it is about coexistence? What if it is about what Jyunmi said, learning to use it today, and what can it actually do for us today? So just thought I would throw that out there for any last comments as we wrap things up here. But anybody have any extra on that? Nope. Okay, that's fine.
No,
we can.
Yes. I think that learning to use it is key. And by learning to use it, by learning to coexist, we are both engaging in AGI, but also making it eliminating whether it's necessary or not, right? That distinction, we move beyond the distinction because all of the things that we think we're waiting to do or waiting to turn on, or like Microsoft isn't getting its thing anymore. OpenAI is doing something different based on AGI. In terms of our use, that ceases to matter when we are moving forward in this Ethan Mollick concept of like, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like, just engage with it now. It's already going to change things for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's not even really the rollout that we've talked about, you and Karl, in terms of it may take 10 years for businesses for generally businesses to understand how they could use it, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's just like with the current AI or even yesterday's.
Yeah, the last point I'll make on this is Ethan just talked about this again. I think a post last night, today. I don't know. Like I said, he posts a lot, but he just said, like, I hate to be a broken record here, but if you just had O3 deep research for the next 10 years, we'd still be coming up with new ways and innovative ways to prompt, to get it to do things that nobody has really thought of today. I mean, how many times do we see really innovative prompts? You go, I would have never thought about asking it to do this, that, or in this order. And it unlocks new abilities, secret ways, secret worlds and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a valid point that it doesn't necessarily need to advance beyond today, although it will, for us to see long lasting, results from it. And ultimately, isn't that really what matters? Or do we need to be fixated on this idea of AGI? So we'll wrap it up there today, guys. A couple things to get you going. Like I said, it looks like we have a bunch of new viewers on today's show. If this is the first time you're finding us, hey, welcome. Appreciate you. We're here Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. You can join us live inside the YouTube chat, where we have lots of fine folks in there right now. And that's a great way to play along. But if you aren't catching us live, which is totally understandable, you can also come to our newish community by going to the Daily AI Show community.com, and that will take you to our Slack invite. That'll take you right into the community. It doesn't cost anything. Come in there, hang out, talk post show, talk about what you like, make suggestions. All the above is in there, and it's on the screen now as well. We also have a newsletter that goes out, same kind of concept. It's more than the show, so that goes out every Sunday. And like I said, you can come back and hang out with us every single weekday. This is episode 451. We have not missed. We take pride in this. We have not missed a Monday through Friday since we started. And since I mentioned it a little bit earlier and people were talking about it in the comments, yes, August 7th, which is a Thursday this year, is our 2-year anniversary. So yeah, we've almost been talking about this for 2 full years, and we have no intention of slowing down. So come hang out with us, subscribe, like us, join the party, join the conversation. And you could be pretty sure that we're going to be back every single weekday, bringing our thoughts on whatever the current state of AI is. So that's it. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on a Monday. And Beth, I don't know. I feel like I need to ask this before we go. Will we have an outro? Do we even think it will? Or are we gonna?
We're gonna do the artificial general outro. Yes, I will play the outro as soon as
the artificial general outro.
Okay.
Well, I say let's get Jyunmi sign off, and then let's give it a shot.
Aloha.
Come on. There we go.